So in our last video, we talked about how to think when it comes to creating tables that will go into a database. So today, what we'll be doing is we'll actually create this table on PGAdmin or in the Postgres SQL server. Since we have to do it in Postgres server, we just need to open up our PGAdmin console and then select the server. We had already created this tutorial server earlier, and we'd be using that for this. What we need to do here is that we expand this, and then under databases, we'll choose our respective database. In our case, it is tutorial underscore db underscore one. And inside that, we have got this table, this section called schemas. Under schemas, we have got public, and inside public, we have tables. What we'll be doing here is, first of all, we'll create one new table. So there's already an existing table in the last video that we were explaining. I'll just simply delete that or drop that table. So that is what you do here. You click on delete or drop. So I'll just simply do that and then start creating our tables straight away. So first table, as you must be remembering yesterday, I had mentioned that if any table is pointing a foreign key to another table, then the second table should be listed above. So this makes our job extremely easy right now. Because of this diagram, you see that we know in what order we have to create the tables here. So first we'll be doing shop status, then shops, then category status, then product categories, products, staff status, customers, staff, and then the sales. So let's start with shop status. I'll just copy this name, and then I'll go here and the tables, I right click here, and then I create, and I select the option called create, and then select table. So I would give the table name, that is what we had here. Then I would simply go to the section called columns. And I remember there were two fields under status or shop status. First one was status ID, which is the primary key. And I will list down here. And second one is the status name, which is actually a string. In Postgres term, it's character varying. So when I say it's strings, it could be, it would hold values like active, inactive, actual words. So I'll make this as character varying. So this is arranged in alphabetical order. So I'll just click here, character varying, and status ID, I'll put it as an integer because that is a primary key, and it's typically you can visualize it as a serial number in a physical register that you may be owning. So let's select it as integer, and then both of them should not be null. So that's why I would make these two as yes, and status ID is the primary key. I'll click here. Then further things we don't need to worry about. So here you see the constraint, it's already linking primary key as status ID. So everything else is automatically gets generated, and so on. So going to this SQL tab, it is very interesting out here, is that it actually converts what is there in this form into a SQL query. It tells that, okay, create a table whose name is shop status. If you remember, this name is the same as what it is here. And similarly, it has mentioned the key name or the field names. Those are stated as status ID and status name. Both are not null. If you see here, not null, not null. And status ID is of the type integer, whereas status name is of the type character varying. And it also says that primary key is a status ID. We would ignore all these for now. So I'll click on save, and here you'd see a new table will be opened up. And here, if you see under columns, the two columns have shown up. I can right click and then I can view or edit data, and I select all rows, and it will show the same thing to me in a tabular format. Here you see status ID and status name. It is very similar to what we see here, isn't it? Created the table called shop status. Let's go ahead and create the table called shops. So here you can see that shop status had status ID and status name, and shops table had shop ID and shop name. So essentially these two tables are pretty much the same, with shops table having an additional field which should reference to shop status table as a foreign key. So these are the three fields that we'll be having in this table. So let's do that. In order to do that, we need to go to our PGAdmin, and then right click on tables, create, and click on create tables. And I'll give this a name of shops. So I'll just simply copy that in order to avoid any typo, and I select this. Then I go to columns. I add 3 columns. One was shop ID, second one would be shop name, and the third one would be shop status. So let's select this shop name and shop status. Now, shop ID being a primary key, that is what we have decided. We'll keep it as an integer as we have done it previously. So let's select integer. Shop name is a string, so we'll select it as character varying. And shop status would be a foreign key to this shop status table. So when this is a foreign key to the status table, that means it references to the primary key of the table. And shop status itself is an integer type, if you remember. So we'll select this as an integer type. So let me scroll down, and here I'll make all of them as mandatory fields such that they cannot have any null value, and I'll make integer shop ID, which is an integer, as primary key. Now we have defined the 3 column names. What we need to do next is we have to map this or reference this to the primary key of shop status table. How do we do it? We go to this tab called constraints. Here you can see that shop ID is already constrained as a primary key, right? Now we go to foreign key and we add this. Clicking on this plus icon will add a new foreign key, and we click on this edit row button. Once you do that, we go to the columns field here, and we say that shop status, that's a local column that is in the new table that we are creating, is referencing to this table, that is shop status table, and within that table it will reference to the column that is status ID. So we'll select status ID and click on this plus icon, and here you see that the reference has established. Now everything else stays the same. I'll directly go to the SQL part, and here you see that it is creating a table called shops, where shop ID is an integer and is not null. Shop name is a string or character varying and is not null. Shop status is an integer and it is not null. And primary key is a shop ID, foreign key is a shop status, and it references to the status table, and within that table it is referencing to the column name status ID. It is exactly the same: integer, string, foreign key referencing to the shop status table, and within that table referencing it to their primary key. Now here you see, and on delete no action, on update no action, on delete no action. We'll talk about this a bit later. So for now I'll just simply copy this entire query, and I click on save. The moment I click on save, another table will be created, which is of the name shops. Let's see the columns. All the columns are there, and if I see the data out there, it will show in the tabular format. So no data has been inserted. That is why it is an empty table. Now I'll show you another way of creating a table. That would be that I'll show you by creating this table called category status. What I would do is, instead of going to tables and right clicking and creating it, I will do it through the query window, which I can open by clicking on this icon. When I click on this, I have to write a query or SQL query. In the interest of time, I had copied that query, remember? And now I'll write that here. I'll just paste it. Now let me create this table called category status. I copy the name and I add it here. Category status, and that's it. And here alter table public category status, right? I'll copy status ID from here and I paste it here, which is an integer and it's not a null. And I copy status name and I paste it here, which is character varying and it is not null. And I would so this is required. So status ID would be the primary key. There's no foreign key relationship here, so I'll just remove this, and shop status is not needed. I'll remove this as well. With this, if I execute this query, here you would see that a new table would be opened, which would be of the name category status. Let's try it out. So query returned successfully in 347 milliseconds. No tables are showing here. Let me refresh it. And here you go, category status. And if I see the columns, those columns are already there, and I click on view already data and all rows, and the table is showing in the tabular format. So this is pretty much it about how to create tables in a database. There are multiple other ways to do when you are integrating any web server thing, where you can trigger the same actions from the web server's end, but that is beyond the scope of this tutorial or this video. What we'll be doing again here is I will create all these tables, and see you there in the next video, where we'll be discussing about how to insert data. Thank you.